Hey guys, I've been watching a lot of these videos from the It Gets Better project, and I was pretty moved by a lot of these things, and I wanted to contribute my own story for people who watch these things and who feel a need to hear these things. Um, I was pretty heavily bullied when I was a kid. Uh, I certainly got my share of faggot comments. I got my share of a lot of comments. Um, as it turned out, I'm not gay. Didn't necessarily know that at that age. I mean, for God's sake, at the age that people started bullying me, none of us had a sexuality expressed. We were kids at that time. But it was pretty harsh. And I caught a lot of verbal abuse. I got a fair amount of physical abuse, some damage. I have a knee that didn't work right for a few years because one of these guys threw me down on the cement floor of our gym. Um, it was pretty harsh. And a lot of that bullying took the form of sexual harassment of a kind. Um, like I said, as it turned out, I'm not gay, but I fit or didn't fit into that set of things that kids then thought guys are supposed to be and what they're supposed to do, what they're supposed to be like. I was a skinny, weak little kid. I didn't really have any interest in sports. Didn't like to play them. Didn't like to watch them. I had nothing to relate to on that score. I liked to read. I liked music, and I didn't know at all how to relate to a lot of the things that the other guys did, and they hated me. They were pretty horrible. Um, Middle school was where things bottomed out. I know a lot of people, including a lot of people who are watching these videos, think high school is the worst time of their lives, and I don't blame a lot of them for feeling like that. I know in my case, high school had its bad moments. Some really bad moments, in fact. Middle school was worse than anything. Middle school is worse than anything I've ever experienced in my life to date. Actually, that should point out part of what we're saying. It does get better. It certainly gets better from that point. Middle school was the cesspool of my existence. And it was in middle school that I seriously considered killing myself for a while. I wouldn't quite so I wouldn't go quite so far as to say I made a full attempt. I got real close. There was one day I remember I had gotten hold of some knife or other, forgotten exactly what. I was alone in my room, and it was at this point where I was in middle school and every single day was agony because every single day I had to drag myself out of bed and go to school and deal with this Lord of the Flies like bunch of assholes. They were horrible people, and I knew every day I'd have to survive being around them and among them. These are people who would pick me up and throw me in a garbage can. They'd smack me into walls when teachers weren't looking. Like, you know what it feels like to have your head pushed into a brick wall, into a cement cinder block wall? That's what I had. And every day could have been like that. Any day of the week, in any given school week, I could go to school and have to deal with something that vicious and that arbitrarily cruel and that heartless. And as far as I could see at that time, this was never going to end. I was not turning into one of these big, strong guys. I wasn't shooting up and getting a lot of height like a lot of them were. I was staying this small, weak thing. Um, they thought I was ugly. They told me I was ugly. I believed that I was ugly. They told me I was unpleasant. They told me that no one liked me. That I'd never have any friends. We're talking like the other people in the school, the other kids. You think it sounds so stupid when you say it now. To think that a bunch of 12-year-olds could say this and anybody gives a goddamn. But if you're in school, then you know perfectly well. It's a lot harder to discount what your peers say on that stuff. Point being, I didn't think it was ever going to get better. I didn't think anything was ever going to change significantly like this. I'm going to be short and weak and ugly and unloved and unliked, and it's never ever going to be any different from one day to the next. And I had this knife, and I remember trying out the blade on my left wrist, see if I could summon up the guts to just open up the veins and be done with the whole thing. And I thought about it for a long time. Had that knife sitting there on my wrist for a long time. There was no one reason why I didn't end up doing it. Partly, it was just that sheer cowardice of, do I have the guts to go through with this? I didn't. There was also the thought of what it would do to my family to find me, either dead or not, bleeding from a self-imposed gash in my arm, and what it would do to them. I mean, they weren't like that to me. My family didn't bully me, I understand, and I understand that a lot of you are putting up with that. But aside from that, there was also the thought that while I was sitting there looking at the knife on my wrist, partly there was the thought that there's gotta be something better than this. It's never gonna be just like this, right? There's gotta be some better way to get through things than this. I didn't know. I was just hoping. You understand? I'm just hoping here. But my thought was like, there's gotta be something better than just dying at the age of 12. There's gotta be something. I don't know what it'll be. At that time, I was still convinced nothing would ever really get better. I just had this vague sense of there's gotta be something other than this as the end of things. And in fact, there is. It took a long time. It took a long time for things to really get better. Middle school, like I said, was the worst in my life. I'm 32 years old now. Nothing in my life has ever been as bad as those 3 years of middle school. High school could be bad. High school was a little bit better for me than it was for some people. I started to find a few other misfit kids that the others didn't deal seriously with in some ways, and I hacked it out. I made it through high school. College was so much better. Can't even compare. College was much better. After college was even better. My life has, in just about every way, gotten a lot better up from that low point in middle school. Been a straight upward climb. And I want you to know that it does get better. It's tougher for some people than for others. I didn't know if I was straight or gay or what when I was 12 years old. I wondered, and I wondered partly because everybody else seemed to think I was gay. Not that they thought I was homosexual exactly as much. They had this idea that gay is this kind of off-brand guy, if that makes sense to you. I didn't know. It took me a while to figure out what my sexuality was. It takes some people longer. And takes some people longer to make their peace with the different kinds of categories that other people are going to try to put them in. I'm not going to tell you to try to be one category or another, and that when you get out of this, you can pick one thing and go with it. That's neither here nor there. The point is, you've got to get through this. You've got to get through this because those people who are pushing you around, who are pushing you into things, who are hurting you physically and emotionally, they're hateful people. And you can't let your life be dictated by people who are driven by that much hate that they have inside them. I'm thinking now, I don't know the specifics if whoever's going to watch this. I'm thinking of what I would say to my own 12-year-old self if I could talk to him and tell him this stuff. I guess I would tell him, not only does it get better, it gets much better. You have to make some choices about some things eventually. If you find in some ways that where you are, things just won't get better, you've got to get out of there. You've got to go. You move away if you have to. You separate yourself from some people. That's hard. There are obstacles to it. But it's a matter of survival sometimes. And you have to survive. You want to survive. And all those hateful, horrible people who are going to tell you that you're ugly, that you're unloved and unlovable, and that there's no reason for you to be here and you may as well just kill yourself. Not only are they hateful, but they are wrong. You will grow up to be more beautiful than you realize, more than you can guess. And you'll grow up to be a lovable person. You'll be loved. You're going to be loved by your friends. You're going to be loved by your family. And you're going to be loved by lovers. You're going to have that whole life, you know? I won't tell you that you're going to grow up one day and have this fabulous amount of money and that you're going to have this incredible lifestyles of the rich and famous life. It's wonderful that people like Jake Shears are also making videos like this telling you it gets better, and they're right. It's not that everybody who survives being gay, being queer, being different grows up necessarily to be incredibly rich and famous because of it or in reward for it, but you get to grow up. You deserve to grow up and have your life. You have a life worth living. And fuck every one of those people who tells you haven't, that you don't. They're not right. And I want you to listen to them. You have a life worth living, and you ought to go out and live it. You may have to work a little harder than other people to get to it, to get to where you can do it, but it's there. And I want you to grow up and be able to take it, and be able to have it. I want to know people like you when you've grown up. Someday I might have children. I want them to have that same thing. I want them to grow up, and I want their friends to grow up with them. And you can't throw that away because some short-sighted, mean-spirited, miserable people try to tell you otherwise. It does get better. And you deserve the chance to find out firsthand.